Well, we'll go ahead and get started here. Thanks everyone for being here. I'm Courtney Block, one of the librarians, and it has been an honor to watch Dr. Subhranil Day go through the process of publishing this memoir. So we're super happy to be here celebrating him and happy to have you all here. We do have some pizza and some refreshments in the back. Please feel free to take as much as you'd like. And also we do have Subhranil brought his copy, a wonderful copy of The Time on the Gravel Roads. We do have a library copy here as well. We will be placing that in the Odyssey Southeast Authors Collection. So we're happy to have that as our latest addition to that collection. I'm going to turn it over to Suze, and I just want to say congratulations, well done, and the floor is yours.
So welcome everybody to my presentation on my book. I'm grateful to all of you for being here today. You are all here just to listen to me and about my this humble endeavor. So please know my sincerest gratitude. I also thank very gracious Courtney for arranging this today. Can't be grateful enough. So if my voice trembles, it's because I'm moved, not because I'm anxious, just to let you know. Also, because this is a juncture so close to heart, I might get emotional from time to time in the course of the presentation that is to follow. So I wanted to warn people beforehand. So I recently published my long-awaited book, The Time on the Gravel Roads. That is the title. So we'll talk about the choice of the title in a while as well. So so this is the outline of the talk. So I prepared some slides just as a visual guide, of which I will elaborate on in the course of that presentation. And then, like at the end, I would like to read 3 chosen paragraphs from the book. That's the technical book reading part, I presume. But before I get there, I wanted to tell you all about what the book is about, the general flavor of the book, and so forth. I would like to tell you about the nascence of the original idea of the book, and then what people could expect when they're reading the book in terms of mood, flavor, and material, and then give you some more information about the book before I get to the reading part. So the objective definition of the book would be something along these lines. It's the memoir of the 6-year period of my life between finishing grad school and starting here at IUS on a tenure track. So as many of us know, especially professors on a tenure track, and perhaps all the more for professors who are on a tenure track from foreign countries, when you want to be a professor on a tenure track and hopefully at some point become tenured, that also usually becomes your permanent home, like very often the home for the rest of your life. And I have a colorful history, somewhat of a nomadic history, living in different places. So although I enjoyed all of that, I enjoy my past, I cherish my past, I also always I desired that final home that comes with a tenure track position. I wanted to teach physics as a tenured professor at some point. So between finishing graduate school and starting that tenure track position, that is often an anxiety-stricken period for anybody who is looking for that tenure track position down the road. And for myself, and I wrote about this in the preface of the book, the fact that I happen to be a poet at heart, and my good friend always warned me about my poet's temperament. I have strong likes and dislikes, and I have my own styles of working. these were potential issues in the context of a stringent academic career, especially in the context of the first phase of that nomadic phase, which was the postdoctoral research phase. And then I had to teach as a lecturer, as a temporary lecturer, first in North Dakota, then in Minnesota, before I started on a tenure track, because you also need some fresh teaching experience as a full-time teacher before you can apply for a tenure track position. So broadly, that 6-year nomadic phase for me, just like many other people, comprised of a postdoctoral research phase and then a temporary teaching phase. So during that postdoctoral phase, the projects did not always resonate with me. And it brought a lot of anxiety, and of course, the general anxiety that came with the uncertainty of the future. To escape, in order to escape from that anxiety, what I was often doing is to embark on drives on back roads through Bucol Lake, New Jersey, upstate New York. That's where like the first back road travel started. And gravel roads, dirt roads, and enjoy the encounters with nature on the side of the road, pastoral beauty, the beauty of the wild. And I found a lot of solace and delight in those encounters. And then what I would do is I would share some of those stories involving my delighted reactions to those nature encounters, usually humble afternoon drives or weekend trips, with a select group of friends. So that email they started some 25 years ago. And some of these friends, they happen to love the way I express myself in those narratives. And they found something gently evocative and perhaps something unique about those narratives than the way I express myself. And they told me to write a book someday about that aspect where I was finding solace and delight in the encounters with nature. And they wanted me to write about something like a book that would also be expressed in that same voice of a poet. So that's how the original idea came about. So I started thinking during that phase already that if I survive this phase all right, hopefully, then someday I will write a book that will be in a way a collection of these little travelogues, but also it will tell the story of how I found so much solace and delight and inspiration from those encounters with nature. And it will be written in that same voice of our poet. So the voice is, of course, as important. But then came a huge surprise. That is, during the second phase of that, the second part of the nomadic phase, when I started teaching in North Dakota, it was a burst of hope. I was teaching these large classes. So these were, both positions were sabbatical replacement positions. So I was teaching as a 1-year temporary but full-time lecturer. And I was given to teach large classes. And I was a very young teacher back then, no gray hair yet. And I became like a big brother figure to my students, and I connected with my students. And it was, first of all, the teaching was overall very successful, and the way I connected with the students and the way so many students gained from my teaching, that was very inspiring and very encouraging. But also, in the context, the love I received from people, students, and then like with some of them, when they're not my students anymore, I became friends, and they would invite me to their households, to gatherings, and the like. And also other encounters in the context of my travels or interview trips even. I received so much love from people that I now definitely wanted to write a memoir about that whole nomadic phase that would contain the beauty of nature that is being um, described and expressed that with that heart of a poet, but also something that captures the love of human beings, all the inspiration from the human interactions I receive often at unexpected places. So this is what the memoir is about. It's the story of the love for nature and the inspiration and the delight you derive from nature, and also the story of the inspiration you derive from human interactions in the context of teaching and also at unexpected places. So I already spoke about the inspiration behind the book, and then again all the loving interactions. Now, in terms of what the message or the essence of the book is, once again, it's a largely subjective experience that's hard to describe, especially for the author, ironically. But once again, if I'm asked to give it some kind of a label or description, some brief descriptions would be what I just conveyed to you. The story of the inspirational power of nature's beauty, music, and poetry, a story of love and friendship at unexpected places. Also, at the end of the day, a story of simply the celebration of life and the little joys of life. And overall, I hope that a reader enjoys the memoir simply as a touching story presented in evocative words. So what does the book feel like to read? So once again, much of that, the answer to that is belongs to a subjective realm. But once again, if someone asks me to describe, someone curious about the book asks me to describe what a few random chosen pages would read like, it's a number of different ingredients that are alternating, perpetually alternating within the tale. For example, I might talk about afternoon drive on a back road and some encounter with some beauty of nature, some beautiful tree on the bank of a stream, and then some other subtle aspect of it and how that gave me some quirky poetic thought. Then later that night, I might be ruminating on it, or I might be nurturing a poetic idea, or some open-ended philosophical topic. Then the next day, I might have some vibrant interaction in the classroom, say some dramatic demonstration. Also, a lot of humor and laughter in the context of teaching, especially those big classes in North Dakota. And then maybe I'm getting into the anxious mode of regarding an impending interview. And then I go to the interview, and that leads to some unexpected vibrant interactions and some other wonderful human drama, again, love at unexpected places, like even an interview. So this is overall the way the different ingredients alternate. But first of all, I hope that these different flavors or ingredients are concatenated seamlessly enough within the tale. That's my humble hope. But once again, it's the subjective perception of the reader at the end of the day. But what's important to remember is that when all these different things are happening, the different ingredients of different flavor, there's always that underlying constant theme of waiting for that permanent home. That is always the common factor. The underlying melody is there through all these variations that keep transpiring. So my mother, she read the book, and for her, English is definitely a second language, but she, of course, because I'm her son, she read the book slowly with the help of a dictionary. And this is how she described it. And I thought it was poetic. So I tried to translate, make a prosaic translation of her, what she says in Bengali. Uh, An eager wait on the seashore, waves lap and waves break, while the heart holds the conviction that something beautiful will happen. So the title of the book. So the time on the gravel roads, um, it has a double meaning because literally some of that time was being spent uh, traveling on the back roads and dirt roads and gravel roads, the nature and the poetry about nature part. But also life itself felt like a ride on a gravel road because there were these never-ending encounters on the roadside, the never-ending surprises and delights, which brought inspiration and joy. But at the same time, there was always this fear of getting lost and anxiety of not knowing what awaits at the end of the road, the rough ride at the end of the day on a gravel road. So now the cover of the book um, that I don't get to talk about in any part of the actual physical book, but because to my select special audience, this is something I can share. I myself designed my cover from a photograph, this photograph that I took in northern Minnesota on one of my autumn adventures. It was the weekend of the harvest moon. And I talk about that weekend very fondly in the North Dakota chapter. So I was living in North Dakota, but Duluth, Minnesota, the North Shore is only a 4-hour drive. So that weekend of the harvest moon, I made a trip there from North Dakota, and to get to the cover picture, this photograph proper. As part of that trip, I took this dirt road randomly, and I almost literally got lost on that road. So it's I call it a scary, beautiful story in reminiscence. So it was a very anxious evening, and fortunately, I did not get lost because it could have been literally deadly. So fortunately, I survived, and I'm so sentimental. I look at this photograph right now, and so many emotions play through my mind. Like when I was taking this photograph, so I took the photograph at some point, and then just in a while, just a little bit, within a mile or so, this dirt road became a gravel road. And that is when I realized that I am probably lost. And I turned back and I was lost for a while. So when I was taking this picture, I had no idea that the following 2 hours will be so anxiety stricken. And I would literally be lost. But then I also did not know that some 20 years, 18 years from then, I would eventually write a memoir, and this photograph will be on the cover of that book. So interesting how life works often. So one thing I wanted to also convey to people is what this book is not about. So first of all, importantly, this is not in any way an accurate or complete historical account of my life during that phase of life. I am sure, even without me knowing, the narrative suffers from altered memory or false memory. That happens to everybody. But also, intentionally, a handful of characters, I changed their identity and some features of those characters. So that is true as well. And as I mentioned in my preface, once in a while, I intentionally imbued the tale with the present essence of my own mind. So facetiously, I called it 3/4 autobiographical. And that is what it really is at the end of the day. And the equally important thing that I wanted to also mention is that it's definitely not meant to be a life advice or a self-help book. I, I do not believe in giving people life advice, definitely not unsolicited life advice. And I don't believe anything simplistic like me writing the book will help somebody in a straightforward way in the context of how to deal with anxiety or uncertainty of career, uncertainty of academics. Um, it's definitely not that straightforward. I won't go tell people that when they're feeling anxious or confused about some juncture at life, all they need to do is to delve in poetry or take a ride on a gravel road, and that would make it much better. Uh, I don't believe in simplistic advice like that. It does not. That doesn't mean that somebody may not be able to derive some advice from the book, but if that happens, it would be completely fortuitous. But advice, the right advice depends on the human beings concerned, the details of the specific situation, and so forth. So here, I want the book to be perceived as a touching tale, an artistic endeavor to a humble extent, but not a life advice. So that's very important to convey to a prospective reader as well. So this is the website of the book. Author House, the self-publishing publisher, if whatever they are called, they as part of that contract, they kindly made a website for the book. So that's the web address, but this is also the QR code. And before I forget, just to let you all know, I have these leaflets, one-page leaflets right here. If anybody is interested in picking up one or a few after the talk. So this happens to be the QR code, and Danny already kindly checked. If you scan the QR code, it works even on the screen, like you can scan it if you would like. So I wanted to, first of all, express my deep gratitude to all the people who at some point expressed something that they found in my writing. So some kind unsolicited compliment they paid about something evocative or something about poetic that they happened to find in my writing. And some of these people date back to 25 years ago, like when somebody was first like expressing some delighted reaction to the way I express myself, and some are very recent. But all these names that I included there, um, uh, I would be sad if I missed any important names there. But just to let people know, these names I included here are people who expressed um, some delighted reaction, paid me some kind compliment about my writing before I started writing the book. And as a few of these people are here in the audience as well. So all those compliments matter. All those compliments played a role in the creation of the book. And Tyler, my good friend, who was my student 12 years ago, now one of my dearest friends in town, he was one of them. Some of my colleague friends, including Mildred and Valerie and Courtney, they are here. Well, one of these people I wanted to tell you briefly about, that is Robert Brown, Bob. So do not know if I can right here see Robert Brown. So Robert Brown is a big character in the Minnesota chapter. So he became like a friend and an uncle figure, a very loving, kind gentleman. And he is one of the people who very fortunately admired the way I express myself. And then when I was writing the Minnesota chapter, he supplied me with some materials regarding like some aspects of our interactions, some details that I had forgotten, also his mother's diary. So I talk about his mother's diary that pertains to a trip she made, Bob's mother made to Germany right before Hitler was coming to power. So it's a very dramatic diary, a journal that he happened to save, and he showed me in the cafeteria. So when I was writing that chapter, he sent me some photographs, and so that I to refresh the details in my memory, and played a big role in writing the chapter as well. Aside from the fact that he happens to be a big, loving character in the book and an inspiration behind the book. And very sadly, Bob passed away last December. So December 2023, he passed away. I did not know that for quite some time. For a few months, he was not responding to my text or my emails, and then I got really concerned, and I found that out. At some point, maybe later this semester or this coming spring, I will have to track down some family member of his and travel to Duluth and give his family or his clothes to the book. So that's a sad story. A few people on this list, I won't go into much more detail, but a handful of people on this list are no more, have passed away, sadly enough. Now, I definitely wanted to express my deep gratitude to Irvin Klein. He is this kind gentleman in Louisville. He had Zoom meetings with me for a few hours. He just gave me unconditional help and advice on finding the right editor and the optimal path to self-publishing my book and so forth. So I'm indebted to him. And of course, the very gracious Jody Gilbert. She is my gracious editor from Gordon, Indiana. Without her help, the book would not come into being. Fortunately, it did not require too much heavy editing, which probably was a good thing. But nevertheless, like some editing was clearly needed, and especially when it comes to small grammatical issues, punctuation, American English, those kinds of issues, important nevertheless. So she very kindly edited my whole manuscript, and I'm indebted to her forever. So now, finally, I would like to read some paragraphs for you from the book. 3 paragraphs of different flavors I have chosen for you. And before I read every paragraph, I will briefly tell you about the context. Then get to read. So the first one is when I had started teaching in North Dakota, University of North Dakota, great university, kind of like a hidden gem. Their engineering programs are wonderful, and their aerospace program is usually one of the top 2 in the nation. Oh, there's another North Dakota alumnus right here. Didn't mean to out you like that, but yeah, wonderful place. So it's in a little prairie town of Grand Forks on the bank of the Red River. I started teaching there in fall 2006 as a 1-year lecturer. And when autumn was approaching, I was feeling a pang because by then I had fallen in love with the autumn in Vermont. So let me not get carried away here, not yet anyway. But to me, autumn in Vermont is one of the most beautiful things the natural world can offer in terms of pure beauty. And I had been utterly enamored by the autumn, the beauty of the autumn in Vermont. Many of those backroad travels through the autumnal scenery of Vermont were made with my dear childhood friend Taboon. So his name would come up in this paragraph that I will read. So when autumn in North Dakota was now approaching, close to that October, so same time, like late September 2006, so 18 years ago, my mind, looks like yesterday. So I was thinking about the autumn in Vermont and feeling the separation. And this paragraph pertains to some ruminations I underwent one night in the context of the arrival of autumn when I was living in North Dakota. So page 100, this paragraph is on that page. Meanwhile, autumn was approaching. Tubun told me on the phone that due to the abundant rainfall that summer, the trees in New England were in good health, as reported by two of the authentic fall foliage websites. Both of those websites proclaimed with the same simple words, "This year in Vermont, the woods are full." That simple phrase conveyed a sense of the inevitable, a promise of our familiar rich beauty that was yet again imminent, but this time separated from me by a long distance. North Dakota was no New England, and no maples were to be seen in the prairies. I heard that the foliage display in the region was lackluster, and sometime in October, all the elm leaves would simply shrivel and fall. However, during an afternoon drive in the outskirts of Grand Forks, I drove by stubble plains and felt that the air had picked up an odor that I could smell every autumn, no matter where I was. That night, I ruminated on images of autumn from many places, while I also contemplated the very placeless essence of autumn. During his stay in Japan, father had described rubicund hill slopes near Kyoto. I had once read a description of an immaculate grove of white birch turned bright yellow on the Ob River bank in Russia. That in turn brought back the memory of some painting that depicted an English beach forest, reminiscent of a profusion of gems emitting a pure golden light. Back in Bengal, Kashpur, the soft white count grass of autumn must be blooming on riverbanks, I reflected. A certain Tagore imagery came to mind. The autumn goddess arrives on a chariot of a luminescent cloud, and swans roaming a secret bower on the Ganges bank receive the goddess on their gentle wings. Yet more imageries of autumn from different places floated forth and caressed me from the inside. And yet, amid the variety, so many aspects of autumn always seemed the same everywhere. The crisper air, the bluer sky, the shifting sun, the hay and the stubble plains, along with that subtle yet quintessential order of the season. Still, I felt the separation from the mountains of Vermont and wondered, probably for the first time, if the American poets wrote about autumn. What about the English poets? Suddenly, I remembered a cursory encounter with Keats's To Autumn during my teenage years. I retrieved the poem and read it again, this time with sincerity. Thee sitting careless on a granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind. I had to look up the meaning of the word winnow and realize the rustic, tender beauty of an image that is indeed placeless. I remembered my grandmother winnowing rice on the village house courtyard back in father's native village. I went to bed and slowly fell asleep, pondering, in Vermont, the woods are full. So the next paragraph pertains to my feelings of being transported back to the student mode, that very precious feeling, after completing my first academic year of teaching in North Dakota. So 2006, 2007, that year, after I finished the first two semesters, I underwent these feelings. So this paragraph pertains to that state of mind. That night, I reflected on the first academic year of teaching I had just completed. Despite the challenges and open questions, and despite the jagged edges and occasional trepidation, I had enjoyed it tremendously. Apart from the obvious satisfaction of imparting the understanding of a concept, along with the joy of vibrant interactions, what was also precious was how I myself was partly transported back to my own student days. Not only in terms of revisiting the stimulating ideas of fundamental physics, but also looking at familiar concepts from new angles, along with learning new details and interconnections. The joy of understanding and the joy of thought for its own sake. A joy not marred by a suffocating publish or perish philosophy or the disconcerting pressure of bringing in funding. The pure joy of just being a student. I suddenly felt grateful to North Dakota for giving me the opportunity of a long-awaited rebirth. Within a span of only 2 semesters, I had been taken through an invigorating journey that involved a visit to a plethora of beautiful ideas and concepts. The graceful motion of rolling wheels and sliding ladders, the intriguing mathematics of a stack of oranges, the tantalizing science behind a chameleon's caprice, the fairy tale of a star that hides in the suture lines of the eye, the collision accelerator toy inspiring the dream of the Voyager, and so much more. And through that delightful ride, a student of physics was reborn. And now to the third paragraph I have chosen, which is significant in the sense that this was when I finished teaching as a lecturer. So this was following my last class in Minnesota. So that would be the last class before I started here back in 2008 at IUS. Incidentally, this paragraph is not about teaching. It is a celebration of the inspiration and the joy I derived from all the love from the human interaction during those 2 years. Oh, by the way, it uses the phrase pirate professor, and there's a sweet story behind why the students were calling me pirate professor. I had to use an eye patch, which the story is in the book, of course, for a couple of days in class, and then they were just calling me that endearingly enough. So that's why the phrase pirate professor. So this was the last summer class in Minnesota, 2008 summer. Okay. On my last day of summer class, the students said goodbye to their pirate professor. That night, while lying on my couch, I ruminated on the 6-year-long nomadic phase. Before I had started teaching, I would find every opportunity to escape into nature and find solace as well as enchantment in its delicate, minute details and its grand offerings alike. That is how the passion for traveling off the beaten path had been born to start with. However, after I had started teaching, besides the precious reconnection with the part of my inner self that would forever remain a student, the scope of human interactions altogether had multiplied manifold. And those interactions had provided access to a previously unvisited corner. And those interactions had provided access to previously unvisited corners of another grand garden, the garden that rises in sentient human hearts. I had witnessed a rich spectrum of human emotions and sentiments, and I had witnessed the kindling of passion and curiosity. I had received a clearer glimpse of the good that human beings have the capacity for, despite limitations dictated by finiteness, selfishness, or even malice. In the course of my teaching, in the course of new friendships in all the different places, and even on my interview trips, I had had human interactions that had left an impression both dulcet and hopeful. And in the course of all that, I myself, severely limited in my own capacity for goodness, had perhaps become a marginally better human being. That's all. So if I may, because of, I have enjoyed my time here with you all kind people so much, and we have had such wonderful, usually brief, but still wonderful, thought-provoking discussion. To conclude, I would like to recite the Bengali of a Tagore poem, 4-line Tagore poem that's part of the preface. So this is how I wanted the book to be. I wanted to I wanted to create something uh, that is genuine with the hope that somebody, even some stranger down the road, would pick it up and hopefully love it. Um, how many? Time will tell. So it's a poem in the preface. So let me recite the humble, prosaic English translation I tried to make and included at the end of the preface. Do not ask to whom I dedicated a song. On the wayside dust it lies around for the one who could give it any worth. Have you heard my message and drawn it close to heart? I do not know your name, but to you I dedicate the fruit of my reminiscence. And the Bengali, the Tagore Bengali, goes like this. শুধায়না কবে কোন গান কাহারে করিয়াছিনু দান পথের ঝোলার পরে পড়ে আছে তারি তরে যে তাহারে দিতে পারে মান তুমি কি শুনেছ মোর বাণী হৃদয়ে নিয়েছ তারে টানি জানি না তোমার নাম তোমারই সপিলাম আমার ধ্যানের ঠান্ডা থ্যাংক ইউ